Everyone, how are we all doing today? I'm just gonna adjust this real quick. Welcome to our review of episode 3 of the Rings of Power. Just kind of a brief little intro is that there will be spoilers. We're talking about our full feelings and thoughts about the episode.
All of them.
I haven't been able to figure out why, but I apologize if there's any stopping or stuttering in the video. Haven't figured out how to fix that with the video camera and the computer, so do apologize for any of that in advance. In fact, I think there was some that just happened about 20 seconds ago, and that brought it to mind. And then just a quick reminder of how we are approaching this. We are just judging the Rings of Power based upon as a piece of media, not really associated with Lord of the Rings. There are some aspects where we will talk about in relating to Lord of the Rings. Like there's one specific thing that's a praise that I have for the show, but it does have to do with previous established media depictions of the Lord of the Rings universe. But most of it's just going to be do we think this is a good show or not, based on its own merits. Is there anything I'm forgetting?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, so before we jump in, just to kind of recap, mainly for us to get into the flow of things, because it's been, I don't know, maybe a week since we shot the last video, and we've seen, we've actually watched up until episode 5, so things are a little fuzzy for us, so we kind of needed a little refresher there. But I guess your impressions going into after seeing the first 2 episodes, how do you feel about the series?
Why?
Why what?
Any of it.
Okay.
Like that's my impression after the first 2 episodes. Like yeah.
Okay. And mine is just kind of like, it's a show and that's that, and okay, I guess we'll watch more. So for myself, I would say unimpressed so far. There have been impressive moments, and there have been certainly
I wouldn't
not
say it's
impressive
100% negative. And by the way, I have been holding pecans. This is why my hands look horrifying.
It's a disease.
I just saw it on camera and real. Yeah, these are stains from pecan holes. I'm not dying. I'm not like anything weird like that.
She has a black thumb. Explains why we only got 3 pumpkins. Anyways, was there anything you wanted to say? I was just saying, for myself, kind of unimpressed. Just kind of like...
Yeah, I mean, it's not...
And that's the overall sentiment. There are highs, so to speak, although they're not very high, in my opinion.
Yeah, the highs are not very high.
And there are lows, which can be very deep lows, but they're not frequent. The most frequent thing for me is just kind of
just
like... mediocre, sort of average right now. So,
yeah.
And that's kind of how I just kind of feel about the series so far.
It's very odd feeling because by all metrics, I should be super, super into this show. Mm-hmm. It's fantasy. It's related to Tolkien. Mm-hmm. It's, elves and dwarves and like all that high fantasy stuff that I love. And so it does leave me with kind of this weird feeling because it's like all the ingredients are here. Mm-hmm. I should love this. And I don't. It's
so
just...
maybe some disappointment for you?
I mean, I don't know that there's actual disappointment because from the moment I heard there was going to be an Amazon show based in the Lord of the Rings world, I was like, they're gonna slaughter it, I'm pretty sure. Just because Hollywood does not have, and I understand this is Amazon, not strictly Hollywood, but...
Well, the 2 writers are Hollywood writers.
Hollywood does not have a great track record of book-to-movie adaptations, and so I never get my hopes up for a book-to-movie adaptation, especially not when it's a book or story world that I really, really love. I usually go into it thinking, yeah, they're gonna slaughter it and it's gonna be awful. So my hopes were not super high to begin with, so I don't know that it's actually disappointment. It's just like we have butter and brown sugar and flour and chocolate chips and eggs and these should be really good cookies. Why aren't they? Like, what went wrong? We have all the ingredients and they're still not good. So it's kind of that kind of weird feeling. Like, all the right ingredients are there. Why did it not work?
Okay.
So,
well, there you go. The main reason why I bring it up, and I apologize if I'm a little froggy for whatever reason right now. Main reason why I bring it up is because a lot of the initial reviews that we got were just based on the first 2 episodes. So I kind of wanted to give our impressions of the first 2 episodes. Also kind of talking about the first 2 episodes, there were people, now of course this was coming from sources that were more critical of the Rings of Power. They say that there was a marked drop down in the special effects from the first 2 episodes. I haven't really noticed that.
yeah, it didn't really stand out to me.
I haven't really noticed that. So
like, I wouldn't have remarked on that if you hadn't said that just now.
So, now that we have that 2 episode recap, because, that was kind of the, when the press was hot, because they released the first 2 episodes. That's kind of why we're doing this little, quick little recap of how we're feeling about it before we get into episode 3. So, on that note, episode 3, what's your first thing?
My first thing is about Galadriel and Halbrand.
Okay.
So do you have anything?
Well, I don't know when you're talking about when it takes place in the episode, so go ahead.
So Galadriel has such an off-putting disdain for Halbrand and his kind, as she calls them. Like, as though because they're mortal, they are therefore inferior, like, as though that's their fault, as though it's like a moral failing on their part. And like the part where she tells him, and I don't remember actually if this was in episode 2 or episode 3, but when she tells Halbrand, it would take longer than your lifetime to list the people that have been taken from me, like by the orcs or Sauron or whoever it is she's talking about. Wow, that's like super, super over the line. Like, imagine if I said that to a terminally ill person, like, who only had like a year to live, and I'm like, well, it would take longer than you're expected to live to list all this stuff I've been through.
It's a little different, but I get what you're going at.
That's a horrifying, way over the line thing to say. And you want me to like this character and think she's cool? Like, it's not Halbrand's fault that he has a mortal lifetime. It's not. And she's so openly hostile to the people who saved her life. Like, they're fished out of the ocean by the Númenórean ship. And it's like she's going out of her way to antagonize them, as though they just completely ruined everything by saving her life and not letting her die on a raft in the ocean. Like, a tiny little bit of humility and gratitude would, like, probably... And then she's like, I'm on this island where everyone hates me. I'm like, well, maybe it's because you're hateful and awful. Maybe it's because you make yourself so very hateable. Like, being just, generally nice might go a long way towards making people not hate you so much. So, yes.
That was it?
Yeah, basically.
That's all that whole big paragraph?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Go on to your next point, because that will kind of...
Well, this is just a little note that the Númenórean ships are visually super cool. I know less than nothing about sailing, so I have no idea if, like, the design, how their sails are arranged and stuff. I have no clue if that is even remotely practical or not, but it looks cool.
Yeah, and I like the designs of the ships. I also, overall, just pretty much anything with Númenor, I thought the design was pretty well done.
The
it's
Númenórean aesthetics
CGI,
are really cool.
Just apparel,
the color
everything.
scheme, all of that was really
and
cool.
And for one thing, I mean, not to kind of wade into that, but if we're just talking about, like, how it's being portrayed, I feel like I shouldn't open that can of worms. So we'll just go past
now
that.
I'm curious.
I'm just talking about the kind of people that would inhabit such a geographic area would make sense in regards to certain controversial topics that people have talked about. Yeah,
I see. One thing that I will point out about, because I think
regardless
Numenor
of its impact on the lore,
is beautiful. I love the design. I love everything is beautiful. I do find it a little odd. It seems like there's not a lot of color variety in Numenor. Like, it seems like everyone matches the aesthetic.
I guess you're right, yeah.
Like, everyone is wearing blue or gold or, like, some kind of cream or ivory or some combination there, or maybe, like, a light tan. Like, everybody's wearing those kinds of colors. It all seems to fit in the same palette, which is a little odd. Like, I get creating an aesthetic for a set location or your, story location or whatever.
Yeah,
I get that,
that's kind of how, like, everything has been. Like, if you think about all the places that we've seen, how much have people really looked different? I mean, if anything, you could probably say, like, Bronwyn's the one who stood out most. If you just think about, like,
she's wearing blue and everybody else is wearing, like
dingy gray,
dirty brown stuff.
Yeah. So, I would say, I get what you're saying, but I would say, at least
because she's not like other girls.
There you go. But I would say, at least in terms of consistency with the series, I would say, well, that's consistent. People are very...
It somehow sticks out more.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe because it's so bright and colorful.
Maybe because there's more people there.
I mean, yeah, I think that's
like,
probably...
Like, if you look at the shots, how many
people.
extras do they have in those shots? Whereas the other places we have been, like, Linden and Khazad-dûm and those... Like, there's not been that number of people there.
Okay.
So maybe that's it. I don't know.
Speaking of the Southlands, I have one thing is that they did give a good reason for why Arondir wasn't killed, because they need people to work in the trenches. However, if they're abducting people for working trenches, it doesn't really make sense why it seemed like that one orc was trying to kill Bronwyn and her son.
And, well, first of all, how did they manage to abduct all the elves that were manning this outpost?
Well, they may have hid it. They just don't talk about it, so it's just purely
and
speculation.
And honestly, I don't understand the orc trench, okay?
The tunnel, love. The tunnel.
But it's not a tunnel, though. It's a giant open trench. And around here...
They got the things over the top. They got a roof. It's a tunnel.
When he meets up with his friends, like, who are also... have been abducted and enslaved to work in the orc trenches... Arondir says, this must be how they've escaped our detection. But it's literally a giant trench. How have you missed this?
Well, I mean, there are actual tunnels.
Like, in some places, yeah.
Yeah.
But not there.
No,
it's
not
like
there.
Like, you're literally open to the sky, and...
No, there's the tent. Are we open to the sky?
Yeah, that stands out, though. Like,
I know
it doesn't look like the surroundings. Like, this is how they've escaped our detection. Well, I thought elves had, like, supervision. Like, how have you missed this giant gaping trench in the earth with this decimated landscape all around it? Like, yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And then to kind of, well, I guess I'll just backtrack. I think the orc designs are very well done. I think they rival anything done by the Lord of the Rings. Certainly better than The Hobbit. Not that the orc work in The Hobbit was bad. It was just that they over-relied on CGI orcs, which that was kind of my big, huge nitpick with, one of my nitpicks with The Hobbit.
I've heard some complaints, that the orcs in this series, Rings of Power, that they're very white, like their skin is white, their clothing is like a dingy white. They're very... I haven't particularly noticed... Like, I was specifically looking for that because I've heard so many people, like, why are the elves completely white when they're, like, gray and green and brown and these
elves,
other...
You mean the orcs?
The orcs, that is what I meant. Like, why are they, like, so bleached out and white?
Well, maybe that's part of something.
And so I was specifically looking for that, and I haven't noticed it so far. So...
Maybe they get they're different shades, and now they can walk under the sun or something. Although I personally feel like whatever they're going to do to Mordor, because they talk about the shadows, that it creates that cloud cover or whatever, and then but that's just over. I don't really care about that.
Well, I'm pretty sure that comes later.
Well, I know that's what
I
I'm
know
saying.
things.
Well, okay, yes. Well, yeah, I've seen Lord of the Rings too. I saw that big cloud.
No, I wasn't even talking about that.
I know. Let me see here. Okay, so just to... Oh, and before we get back to Galadriel, I can't remember. I think it was the first guy, the guy that Arondir came, his hood homie, that came to the town with when he died. I don't know if that's the first time that we did the slow motion in this scene. There was a lot of slow motion in this episode for whatever reason.
There was, and it was weird.
But for this particular scene, it was already kind of over dramatic, but the slow mo really made it almost kind of like comically over dramatic. Where it's just kind of like, okay,
like we're
I get
trying super hard to make it because we.
But I don't care about this character.
Exactly,
he had like
30
2 minutes
seconds
of
of them
time.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I understand that he's important to Arondir, but you did not establish that in the show.
Exactly. So we're trying to wring more drama out of it by
slowing
putting
it down
in slow motion, and like that. No.
Was there something you wanted to say?
Oh, just that I got your joke about the hoods.
Oh, okay.
I got it. Took me a couple of minutes, but I got
Ain't nothing getting past you.
You gotta get up pretty early in the morning.
What's your next thing?
About what is that man's name?
Elendil?
Yes, him. Thank you.
When him and Galadriel
are talking. Yeah.
Okay, wait. I'm gonna hold you and I'll let you talk because that's kind of my next thing. But kind of going back to the previous scene with Galadriel when she's just kind of like on the boat, I guess, and kind of talking, is that Galadriel does not have a diplomatic bone in her body, and you would think someone who has hundreds, if not, I don't know how old Galadriel's supposed to be, but hundreds, if not thousands of years of experience.
If she's been alive that long, how is all of Middle Earth not engulfed in wars that she started?
Oh my god. You would think that she would know her way to be able to work a crowd. Now,
or at least show basic respect and
exactly
courtesy.
To be like, okay, this is a king. I may chafe under them because they're a human king and they think they're all super important when they're really not. But I'm going to, I'm going to schmooze them so I can get what I want.
Right.
We don't see any aspect of. She's just very antagonistic.
So antagonistic
towards everyone. And I would say that Elendil's kind of the first person where she kind of softens a little bit, but especially early on in this episode, she's very antagonistic towards him.
Only because he offers her something that she's interested in.
Well, yeah.
So,
but like I said, I understand that may be an aspect of her character that the show writers and showrunners didn't really want to. It's like, oh well, she's this super cool swordsman person. She's not essentially diplomatic, but like she shows no basic understanding of courtesy or just diplomacy.
Exactly.
Which I know there are people there. I get to take care of them at work who are like that. But especially considering how old she is, what kind of character she is, the world that when you take all these considerations just within the show, we're not talking about anything outside of it, I still think it's very unusual that she's just so antagonistic. There are people out there, but there's so genuinely few people that to see it portrayed in the way that they have portrayed it, and especially with the sense. And I'll allow, I don't think this is going to happen, but I would allow for some room with like, well, she's not supposed to be a sympathetic character. But especially with some of the other stuff that we get in this episode and then obviously later on, the showrunners definitely want you to have sympathy with this character.
They want us to think she's super cool.
So it's just very strange that this character keeps taking such an antagonistic tack towards everyone.
Well, and they've given her all these amazing fighting abilities, as though, well, this is what has carried her so far in her life, because she's been given command of these troops, at least at the very beginning, like, of the first episode. She's given, command of these troops, and she's this renowned warrior, and she's this, and she's that. because she's such an amazing fighter. But the thing is, those few and far between people you mentioned who are genuinely awful and antagonistic and off-putting to everyone, they tend to not get very far in life, even if they are talented, because nobody wants to put up with their crap. Like, okay, I get it. You might be a really awesome fill in the blank with your occupation, but everyone hates you, so we're not going to put you in charge. Like, that's how life works. So, and like, I've worked with those people too. Like, I'm literally standing here doing my job, and you're over here flinging hatred at me. Like, no, I'm not going to give a good report on you to my supervisor. Like, why would I? You're horrible. Yeah, you do your work well, but you make it miserable for everyone else. So it's very unrealistic.
I was thinking more customers. But
well, I've had those too. I've definitely had those too. And guess what? I didn't want to serve those people, even though it was my job. So people like that tend to not get very far because no one wants to have anything to do with them. So, I mean, it would explain why the Elven King wanted to ship her off to the
out of my
Undying
life,
Lands.
Galadriel.
Exactly.
I don't ever want to see
We'll
her
finally
face.
have some peace around here if we get rid of her. So
what's your next thing?
Basically the riding scene, like, okay, when Elendil asks her if she wants to ride to wherever the name of the place is, and she gives him this look and goes, "Did you say ride?" First of all, that's a little cheesy and a little cliche.
What, coming from the connoisseur of horse fiction?
I am one of Like, so they're trying to establish, she really, really loves riding. But then, like, first of all, you've never...
Which I want to give it credit. I appreciate that we established some other facet of her character.
Yeah, besides, like, stabbing things.
Yes!
And being hateful that she enjoys. But then they go into this super weird, like, in a cinematic sense, it's a super weird shot. It's in, like, ultra slow motion. I literally thought it was a still shot at first. It was so slow motion of her riding at full gallop with this ridiculous squinty grin on her face.
They didn't flatter her at all with that shot.
Like, okay, like... Nobody likes seeing pictures of themselves that were taken while they're talking because, like, while you're talking, you're like...
Or, like, when you pause the movie and, like, when the
and
actors...
someone's going...
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, like, they weren't actually making that expression. They were in transition from one, either, you know, mouth posture while they're speaking to another or one expression to another. But, like... It's like they chose a super unflat... Couldn't the photographer be like, okay, relax your eyebrows a little, or the cinematographer, excuse me, you know, relax your eyelids a little. We need to see your eye, instead of this, like, that she's doing while she's writing. Like,
yeah, no shade at the character or the actress.
No, like, that's on the camera people and the director, like...
And how that shot
and why was
the
it
final
so
shot.
slow motion?
I don't know. I think that's just a director choice because I don't recall seeing any slow-mo in the first 2 episodes. And then...
Not off the top of my head, but there might be.
Episodes 3, 4, and 5 are all directed by the same person. And there's been slow... Now, this one was the worst, I think, in slow-mo. Like, most uses of it.
Like, slow-mo is one thing, but then, like, I literally, for, like, half a second thought it was a still shot.
Yes,
There's slow-mo and then there's that.
What's your next thing?
It's about how the Numenorians and how suspicious they are of everybody.
Okay. After that?
Halbrand.
Okay. You go do the Numenorian thing, and then I will swing
basically,
by with
it's just this, like... The Numenor... And I get it. They live in an island kingdom. They're isolated. They're a really long way away from the rest of the world, so they don't get outsiders and visitors very often. I get that, okay? People who live in isolated communities tend to be suspicious of outsiders. You would not know anything about that, moving from California to Romance.
That's a town, by the way.
It's
technically
not. It's a
Willowboy.
mobile home
That doesn't exist anymore.
And a derelict post office. Romance is not a town. It's just a spot
There's a sign with letters on it.
In the woods. I grew up in communities like that, isolated rural communities. Yeah, there does tend to be some suspicion of outsiders. But there's like, oh, well, what are they doing here? That's okay, we don't get new people very often. And then there's the Numenorians. And it's not just the Numenorians in this show, though. It's everyone. How does civilization exist in this conception of Middle Earth if absolutely everyone is so suspicious and hostile to absolutely everyone else?
The elves are suspicious of the dwarves are suspicious of the elves, the Harfoots
the
are
humans
suspicious
are suspicious
of
of the elves, the humans are suspicious of the other humans. Everyone is suspicious to a level of outright hostility. Civilization can't exist unless there is some level of trust and at least... I don't like to use this word because of how it gets overused and thrown around, but some level of tolerance. Like, I'm aware that other people exist and I'm okay with that. Like, civilization can't exist if everyone is like, I've never seen you before, so obviously I need to beat you up in an alley. Like, there you go. Civilization doesn't exist.
And you're not foreshadowing that, are you? So, let's see here. I mean, I suppose I'll come back to it. We're kind of skipping one thing, but we were eating at this point, so there was kind of something that happens right before this scene.
While we were making these notes and watching the episode, we were eating, is what you're saying.
So we'll just come to that later because, well, I guess we'll say it's the big flaw of the episode.
Okay.
But I'll just continue because you were talking about Halbrand.
Yeah.
So two things for me. First of all, where does Halbrand get the money from? They were on a shipwreck. Now they are kind of like the because he's like drinks all around, in his effort to steal the seal or emblem or whatever they called them, and insignia. It's not one of those things where it's you can make a reason for it. He's considered a guest of the queen, and so maybe he
was given like an allowance or something.
Yes, but it just seems very strange. Mm-hmm. Just like, oh, drinks all around. It's like, well, you were just on a shipwreck. So it's just one of those things where it's like, it's not super important, but it's one of those things that like, okay, I'm seeing, it feels like an inconsistency where you can literally just have a quick little scene showing him being given money. Where like it would be 5 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is, and now part of this may be shaded by certain things that I know, but the Halbrand going absolutely berserk on the Numenorians that he stole from one. What was it? I forget what he said. He's like, you don't want to do this or something along those lines.
I don't know.
But he said something where it's like obvious. I mean, I had this feeling anyways, but after he said it, it's like, oh yes, and he's going to go total beast mode, as they say, and destroy all of them.
Well,
which he did. And so that was kind of foreseeable, and yeah, it was kind of, again, telegraphing your punches. I mean, that's my next thought. No original thoughts for this series.
No, the fight scenes for this whole series are very sloppy. Like,
well, I mean, I think the fight was fine, but like, I totally foresaw that happening. It would honestly have been more interesting for Halbrand just to get beaten up. Mm-hmm. But that's what they were foreshadowing the whole time of, oh, Halbrand's going to totally open up a can of you-know-what. Mm-hmm. And he does, so... so you go ahead.
Well, my only note on that fight scene was because, like, yeah, I thought the whole thing was very, like, really? Have we not seen this in 20 other movies, the same scene? My one big complaint was where, the part where Halbrand breaks the guy's elbow. Where he gets him against the corner.
It was like his forearm.
Yeah, breaks the guy's arm. And he's got him pinned there, and then he literally just goes and breaks the guy's arm. Like,
well, there might be reasons for that, but like, taken on surface level.
There was no, like, he didn't back up and get leverage. He didn't put a leg back to brace himself. He wasn't like, he has the guy's arm out here and then shoves it into the corner of the wall. It was like, it was already there, and he just, like... That guy has medical issues if his arm breaks that easily. just saying.
What's your next thing?
My next thing is about Galadriel and Elendil at the archive library thingy.
Okay, go ahead.
So Galadriel. Well, actually, this might have actually been from a little earlier. I had to put some of my notes out of order again because we were eating. Galadriel's line to Elendil about who is this mortal who speaks to me as though he has the slightest idea.
Well, that was
who
not
I
at the
am.
library. They were like overlooking the bay when that happened.
Yeah. Okay. So this was from earlier. So I put my little asterisk in the wrong place. First of all, get the heck over yourself, Galadriel.
I mean, I agree with that sentiment.
You are so conceited and self-obsessed. Get over it. But second, he was there, Elendil was there and heard you when you went to great and mighty lengths to inform everyone of precisely who you were and what you had accomplished when you were in your initial audience with the Queen Regent. Like, you gave this big, long, pompous introduction of who you are and what you have done. So, like, he was there and he heard. So, was what you told him not accurate about yourself then? Or,
it's an expression.
Just don't be awful. Just, there's no need to be awful. And then my only other note about that scene was I thought it was cool that the sigil thing that she's been tracking was actually a map. That was...
Yeah, I forgot about that.
That was cool.
Yeah, well done.
That was cool. Yeah.
That was it?
All about that scene, yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I'll jump off, because this is kind of like my next to last note, because that's when I wrote it down, is that line of, who is this mortal who speaks to me as if he has the slightest idea who I am? That is a very arrogant and also ignorant line. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to build a character that we're supposed to have sympathy for, that we're supposed to like, that's not how you do it. You don't write... Like I mentioned in previous episodes, there are characters that can be this way. There are good characters that can be this way. However, she keeps getting lines where, like, she's being arrogant, where she's being antagonistic, but the feeling is still like, oh, well, we're supposed to root for her. We're supposed to feel sympathy for her.
But why, though?
Well, I mean, yes, but I'm just trying to point out is that you have two totally divergent... You have this... It's between... what's it? The meme, reality versus perception. Mm-hmm. The reality is she's acting very much like a narcissist, an antagonistic narcissist, but the perception is, the feeling that we get is that, oh, well, she's just this character. I don't even want to say, oh, she's misunderstood or whatever, because the show hasn't done enough to even establish that she's misunderstood. But the show is trying to portray her as the primary protagonist, this person that we're supposed to be rooting for. She's not, they haven't portrayed her as kind of like this protagonist that we're actually rooting against. Like, we're compelled to watch her because of how awful she is. Mm-hmm. They're not making their case for a sympathetic protagonist, and they're not doing enough to make her a legitimately good, like, anti-hero character. Mm-hmm. We just kind of have this middling kind of like, we just have this character that we don't, at least for me, I don't really want to watch. I'm not compelled to watch because you're being...
her scenes are my least favorite because she's awful.
Well, you're being wishy-washy with her. Like I said, there's a way with all the stuff that Galadriel's doing, and even with the anti-hero, you can give them scenes like with the horse ride. It shows like, oh, well, they're not completely awful. Like, there's some aspect... That's why they're called an anti-hero and not a villain, even though anti-heroes can be very villainous. There are supposed to be aspects of them that you can relate to, but they're not committing to that because I don't think that's the arc that the showrunners were going for. It is kind of just a very typical sort of like, oh, well, we have to show how much of a cool kick-butt woman she is, and for whatever reason, they think what they're doing is the best portrayal of that. Which it isn't.
Being obnoxious and arrogant and hostile does not make you cool, just FYI, and it doesn't make you strong. And it's part of a consistent pattern. Galadriel assumes nobody has any idea of the scope of what she has been through. No one understands my suffering, my losses, my anger. And yet she repeatedly, episode after episode, with character after character, shows this assumption that nobody's pain even comes close to hers. No one's losses come close to hers. No one can imagine what she's been through. And she has an, oh, well, you've never been through anything worse than blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, turns out actually they have. So it's part of a consistent pattern of assuming, like, she's got this angry victim complex and assumes that nobody else has anywhere near the level of pain I have.
Well, like, I don't feel comfortable, especially since, narcissist is an actual term that applies to particular things. I don't feel comfortable calling her a narcissist. Also because the show is so conflicting, you can't genuinely tell or not.
Well, and everything gets labeled narcissist.
Well, yes, exactly. But I think with this episode, what you can firmly say, in light of the previous 2 episodes, is Galadriel's very elitist.
Very elitist.
And
the elite pretty much consists of just her.
Yeah. Because I have 2 lines here. The first one that we've been talking about is that, who is this mortal who speaks to me as if he has the slightest idea who I am? She's not taking, again, no diplomacy at all in her words. Like, Galadriel can feel that way. She can be justified in feeling that way. The show doesn't do that great of a job to establish why she feels the way, to say what she does. And B, even if she does feel that way, you can still, people, I wouldn't even necessarily say lie, but people do lie, and people shade things. Like, let's think about, like, you go to work. You've kind of been having a crummy day. And you say, if someone asks, hey, how are you doing today? And you say, oh, I'm doing okay. Are you really doing okay? Or are you kind of shading things, so that way you're not, there's a multitude of things. It's like, well, they don't really care. There could be that. It could just be, well, I don't really want to talk about it. It's like, there are ways that you can handle this, and the showrunners do none of it. They don't show any complexity or nuance of, I'm saying human. I know she's an elf, but, don't show any complexity or nuance of just character, of just how people act. And so, with that statement, she's not taking into account any of the experiences that Elendil has gone through. Okay, yeah,
he
hasn't lived.
How does she know?
She hasn't lived as long as he hasn't lived as long as she has, but she doesn't know what experience he has. There may be some way that they can kind of sort of relate, and especially with what happens later on, as she finds out, he kind of ends up, like, befriending her and being an ally, so to speak. Maybe saying an ally is better than befriending her. But, but, like, his name means elf friend, right? I think that was the case. And that's another thing, too, is that this works in spite of how Galadriel acts, because she's being totally antagonistic to him. Elendil kind of offers a olive branch with, like, the horse... horse ride and a few of the other things. He helps her with the library and stuff like that. Like, you're trying, Galadriel, now this has been well established, you're trying to get people to come over to Middle-earth to defeat Sauron. Why are you taking steps to not encourage people to your cause?
Exactly.
That
like,
hostility.
They're just supposed to want to help her because of how awesome she is.
Well, I wouldn't even say that. I wouldn't say because of how awesome she is, but just because of how righteous and just her cause is. Which is why those kind of people can turn other people off, because they're just so caught up in the cause. But again, I don't think the show's done that great of enough job. They've said it, they haven't shown it. They've said over and over and over again about how much she wants to stop Sauron. I've never felt it. I've never gotten that feeling. It's like, okay, she wants to stop Sauron. That's great.
The thing is, she's so hostile, and she has so much, like, everything in her is negative. I don't want to open up emotionally to this character. I don't want to invest my emotions, because I know all I'm going to get, based on what I've seen so far, is negative emotion that's toxic and doesn't feel good. Like, I don't feel hope from her, even though she, we kind of intellectually get that sense she hopes to find and destroy Sauron and all of this. But, like, all we get from her feeling-wise is anger and rage and obsessiveness and self-obsessedness and disdain for other. Like, I don't want to open up and engage with all of those emotions. So why would I open up to and engage with this character?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, and kind of on that note a little bit, well, I guess more going back to my comment about Galadriel being elitist, is when she when she finds out that Halbrand is, the king of the Southlands, purportedly, or something along those lines.
Does that happen in this episode?
I believe so, because she has the comment that I put
well,
down. You chafe under the rags of the common.
Yeah.
And so, and that's kind of another, I mean, I think there's a multitude of reasons there, but, Halbrand's really been the only kind of character where she has some sort of, like, modicum of decency towards, although I say that term very loosely, especially with what happens in later episodes. But she's the one that only really kind of has modicum of decency. But, I mean, just think about if someone in real life said those words, how would that make you feel? You chafe under the rags of the common. Maybe you're not a common person. Maybe you think you deserve better than just an average life. And that wouldn't bother you. I would think that the majority of people would be like, okay, wow, you just think the rest of us are all just sort of like peons, peasants, whatever.
Exactly.
And peon is a term from Latin America, specifically Spanish America, where it was a class of people similar to peasants, although I know that there's a different meaning for it in English. But that's how I'm using it. And so, like, so what, does she have disdain for the common people, too? I mean, she just kind of has a general disdain.
Everyone else. Why not?
And really, when you think about it, the only people, because I'm kind of jumping ahead, but the only really people that she has any sort of modicum decency to are all kind of up in the upper echelons of their respective societies. Mm-hmm. Like, she's never kind of rubbed her, I mean, Halbrand is kind of the, was that baby girl?
Yes.
Halbrand is kind of the only person lower down, but when she discovered, now there's a multitude of reasons you can say, oh, well, she can help him in, he can help her in her fight against Sauron, that's why she's doing it.
Yeah, now suddenly she takes an interest in him.
Yeah. But yeah, she has acted very elitist in that. Hi, baby girl! And that's just kind of disappointing.
After nap snack?
So I will keep going.
Yeah, keep going while I get her set up with her snack and her video.
So one thing that we've established, yes, elves are awesome. What you need?
I need your phone so she can watch her.
Okay. Yes, elves are awesome. However, killing an orc with a flimsy root, again, Legolas running up the falling stones. Kind of very ridiculous. I've pulled up many of those flimsy roots. Kind of very similar trees. Is it theoretically possible that you could do it? Yes, it would be extremely hard, but I guess, he's got plot armor and elf power, so he can do it. But that was just kind of very ridiculous for me. I'm just kind of like, okay. And not saying that there aren't sharp roots, but just what they showed us, and the thing's wobbling. Like, okay, you're making this comical. This is supposed to be serious, but you're making it comical, and that's unfortunate, because I want to care about these characters. And then, also aspects, and as we go further in the series, we kind of see this, is that there are, actually, now that I think about it, I didn't write anything at all. I don't remember, are the Harfoots in this episode at all? I don't think they are.
Yes, I have one note on the Harfoots.
Okay, so the Harfoots are in this episode. I don't have any notes about them. So again...
Oh, hang on, I gotta see what she's upset.
What are they contributing to the overall story? We're 3 episodes in. We've had 3 hours of time transpiring. And that's that. In addition, as well, we don't see any scenes with Elrond. We don't see any scenes with Bronwyn. And now we're starting the trend. I kind of am jumping ahead a little bit. We're starting the trend of, there's just we're adding additional storylines. So, and now we have enough where we're not even going to go to a storyline for an entire episode. So I think that's, I don't know if it's necessarily problematic, but again, it's just kind of showing like all these little tributaries running into the river, and now the river's becoming huge and broiling and whatnot, and there's a lack of focus with this series.
Very unfocused. It feels like letting your plot diverge into a bunch of different subplots is fine at a point in your story, as long as you have a clearly established primary plot.
They're trying
and
to get
they
Sauron.
Haven't done that yet. Yeah, but that's all very vague and amorphous.
I mean, if you think about it, really, it's only been Galadriel's that it's about getting Sauron. Because the elves are trying to build the rings, and I know they're trying to bring it all together, and like the Harfoots are just migrating, and then the Southlanders are just trying to survive. So it's all tying into stopping Sauron, but if you think about it, that hasn't been a theme in 3 of the 4 storylines. So anyways, that's all my notes. So you go have fun.
My only note on the Harfoots in this episode is just how very cliche it all is.
Didn't you say that last episode?
Well, yes, because there's so many cliches. Oh my gosh. So Nori wants to go to I don't remember how it's pronounced. Is it Sadek? The wise elder or whatever of their group.
Oh, maybe. I'll go check on her.
Okay. The phone probably fell over. So the Nori, the free-spirited Harfoot who wants to explore and find answers and all of this, she goes to the cart that belongs to Sadek, the group's like wise elder person, because she wants to find the star chart that will show her the stars that the Starman, who she's been helping for reasons unknown. Oh yeah, Starman was the name of a Jeff Bridges movie, wasn't it?
Yes.
Like, he's pointing to these stars, and she's like, oh, well, that's where he belongs, obviously, because reasons. And so she wants to find this star chart, so she sneaks into his wagon while he's gone. And, like, first of all, if you just would have had a little bit of patience, like, you don't have to try to drag him out of there right now. Like, you're going to make him suspicious. You're creating unnecessary like, there's good tension, and then there's, like, why tension. So she's in there, and then, he forgot something. Yeah, I've never seen that happen in a movie or book before, where, I magically forgot something and have to go back and get it. And then, her friend, what is her name, Poppy, is like, oh, yes, you better go back and get, like, hollering
code.
A warning to her, yeah. And so she's there, and she's scrambling around trying to figure out what to do.
Are you sure that was this episode?
Well, that's where I have it written down. And then he pulls back the curtain, and she's gone, because she's found a hiding place. Yeah, I've never seen that in 20 other movies and books. And then, but actually her foot is sticking out from under the tablecloth or whatever it is. And then he happens to look away, and she jerks her foot back under the tablecloth right as he's looking back. Yeah, never seen that before in like 20 other movies and books. And then the
watching Mary's descent into madness has been very entertaining.
I'm sure you found great delight in it. The star stranger person stumbling blindly around in a panic, knocking stuff over instead of just like calming down and like fixing, like, I knocked something over, I'm gonna calm down. No, I'm gonna stagger around and wave my arms in panic and make everything worse. Yeah, haven't seen that before in like 20 other movies and books. We get it, it's all, and then the conversation where Nori is like, well, without friends, without exploring new things, without getting answers, what are we surviving for? And
which
then
are actually very valid points that she's making.
But then I don't know if it's her mom or her stepmom, because it's clear that, like, her dad was married before and his wife died, and so he married this new person. So I'm not sure if that is supposed to be Nori's mom or stepmom or what the exact relationship is there. But anyway, her mother figure is like, well, our ways have kept us alive for 1,000 years. Yeah, never seen that before in like 20 other movies and books.
You're challenging tradition, rebellious child.
So unoriginal. Like, and it's not, I am all for using popular tropes and stuff like that. I'm all for that. But you gotta at least, like, give it a bath first. Like, before you just shove it out there onto the stage.
Of uniqueness to it.
Exactly. Like, at least put a different shirt on it. At least, you know, give it a different haircut before you send it out there. Don't just, oh yeah, I'm just gonna grab this from like 20 other things and just throw it in mine without, you know, they say rinse and repeat for a reason. Well, they haven't even rinsed it. Like, it's still soapy from the last thing. So there's been no effort at, like, recycling, revamping, giving it a twist, giving it a spin.
But
it's like,
Lord of the Rings.
Here are all the tropes and cliches, and the editors said, okay. Like, there was no polishing or anything.
Kind of a lack of, it seems like there was a lot of yes men on this project.
Yes.
Like, where were the people... And who knows, we could be wrong, but who are the people saying, hey, let's think about this for a minute?
Well, like, some of the stuff that's in here, like, these are literally the types of things editors get paid to prevent. So, were there no editors, or were the editors all just falling down on the job? I have no idea what she said. Okay! I did think that when the Harfoots start their migration and they're camouflaging their carts with the pampas grass or whatever it is, I thought that was fun. These, like, blobs of pampas grass moving across I thought that was fun. And then you didn't have any more notes for the rest of the episode?
No, well, I went to the end.
Oh, okay.
I went through all my notes, so...
So the scene where Galadriel talks to Halbrand about his true identity, like, you're actually the king of the Southlands, aren't you? Was actually the first Galadriel scene that I was actually interested in, and she actually became a little bit interesting herself, because for the first time she was actually thinking and talking about something besides herself. The first time this entire series so far. And wow, suddenly she's interesting because she's not completely self-absorbed. And then the only other thing I had was, like, it's weird to me that the orc's skin sizzles when they're in the sunlight. Like,
You said that.
This isn't Twilight. Like, we know, it's established, orcs don't like sunlight. And maybe they're even a little sensitive to it, but the sizzling seemed like a little much. So, like, that was just...
That didn't bother me, but whatever. To each their own.
It didn't, like, super bother me, but it was just a little weird. Like...
And when you have a bunch of other weird stuff going on, it stands out more.
Exactly, yeah. So that was all of my notes.
Okay.
Yeah, on episode... Yeah, my next stuff is all on episode 4.
Okay.
So
overall feelings about the episode, still kind of very baseline, although I wouldn't even necessarily it was better than the other 2 episodes, but I remember enjoying it more.
Yeah. Yeah,
and that was just kind of, you know, I don't know if I would necessarily... Like, if we were grading it, I don't know if I would necessarily get it a higher grade. I just enjoyed it more.
Yeah, it didn't feel as much like I was enduring it. It felt more like I'm watching this. It wasn't as much like I gotta sit here through this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it wasn't like, yay, I'm watching this and I'm loving it, but it was like, yeah, I'm watching this. Like, yeah.
There you go. All right. Anything else you wanted to add?
Not about that episode.
Okay, well, I think we're done.
I have feelings about the next episode, but
we'll get to
save
that
for the next video.
And kind of on that note, don't know when we'll be able to do the next episode. I work a lot of nights the next few upcoming days, so you know we really are only able to do these when baby girl takes her nap. So which
he's only here for when he works an opening shift,
or it's a day off
in the morning,
today.
or it's a day off like today. So no more days off this week. And
well, I mean, technically tomorrow, but
we
have to
technically tomorrow, but we have other stuff to do. So yeah, no more days off and all night shifts the rest of the week. So maybe Sunday.
Oh, I closed Sunday. So,
You close.
anyways,
You're off Sunday.
nope.
Oh,
So,
well.
anyways, we'll get the next video to you as soon as we can, because we have the notes. But at least we won't
All
be
of
getting
them.
too much farther into the series, because my night shifts don't really leave us time to get
Yeah, we
through
don't
an
really have
hour
time to watch
episode.
anything in the evenings.
Yep.
So
But hope you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments how you felt about it. Mary has feelings. She'll have more feelings next
I have
episode.
all the feelings. I am feeling things so you don't have to.
All right, and I'm just enjoying the ride. So, thank you so much for watching our feelings and review and reaction to The Rings of Power Episode 3. Hope you are all having a great day, and remember, what we create matters. Bye.